We need to get on top of those wait lists.
Prime Minister, can I just ask, did you watch the Oval Office meeting with President Trump and President Zelensky?
Oh, yes, I did.
What did you think?
Sorry?
What did you think?
That was a pretty tough watch. It was definitely a tough watch. Both parties have said they could have gone, handled it or gone better. The bottom line is very simple for us. Nothing's changed in our position and support for Ukraine. Ukraine's doing an exceptionally, and President Zelensky's doing an exceptionally good job as a wartime leader, as a leader of a small country that was invaded by a bigger country, and we stand with Ukraine. And so we continue to, with our defence forces, train Ukrainian soldiers in partnership with our UK friends in the UK. We've, as you saw on the third year anniversary, had another $3 million into the Ukraine Relief Fund. And importantly, we've increased and cranked up the sanctions even more against Russia. So, the reality is we want the US and Ukraine working through a proper peace plan. But yeah, it was tough watching.
Do you think that President Trump, or does it worry you that President Trump is aligning more closely with Russia?
Well, again, what we want is a just and lasting peace, and for that to happen, we need the US and Ukraine and Europe to be involved in actually developing that peace plan, and that's what we all want to see. But again, we are a country of values, and we stand up for nation sovereign states. We stand up for freedom of navigation. We stand up for the rules-based system, and that's what Ukraine has done well. Just remember, it was Russia that invaded the Ukraine, and they were the aggressor, and Ukraine was the victim of that, and so we stand with them.
Zelensky treated poorly by the
Sorry, Jen, I'll come back.
Zelensky treated poorly by the United States.
Well, again, as I said, it was a tough watch. Both parties have said they could have gone better.
Do you think that the United States is a reliable partner going forward?
Yes.
Do you think that the United States also shares our values around a rules-based international order?
Yes, but as I've said globally, and I've said for some time over the last year, I continue to advocate for the rules-based system because I think, in many ways, our world order is breaking down from rules to power. That is one of the things that we've got to guard against, and so we've got to continue to make the case. We have an independent foreign policy. I, as Prime Minister, act in New Zealand's national interests, and yes, there's no doubt about it, it's a more difficult geopolitical environment out there in the world, as you've seen in events over the last few weeks. But for us, we have a strong partnership with the US. There's lots of collaboration and there's lots of things that we can do together.
The Greens want you to rule out any involvement in AUKUS post that meeting. They say he's just too unreliable to do any sort of partnership with. What was your response?
Well, no disrespect, I don't take foreign policy advice from the Greens, but what I would say is that there's nothing that's changed in our AUKUS position. We continue to explore whether that's in New Zealand's national interest, and we'll continue to do so. Audrey?
You said a couple of weeks ago you'd be open to an invitation for troops, a peacekeeping force. Is that still your position, and have you been sounded out?
No, I haven't been sounded out, but yes, it is still my position. I'd be very open for New Zealand participating in a peacekeeping mission, but obviously we need to have a peace secured first and foremost, and it seems like we're a wee way away from that. So that's why I want to encourage all the parties to develop that peace plan. That means that Ukraine has to be at the table as part of that conversation, and there'll be ultimate choices for Ukraine, but we need to be able to support them. And if there was we'd be very open to considering a peacekeeping mission. As we do, we have fantastic, our troops are well respected and they participate they're still in very difficult parts of the world doing peacekeeping missions as we speak.
Prime Minister, what's your response to China informing Australia that it can expect more warships following the live fire?
Well, as we've seen, they're acting completely within international law, and that's important. Our issue was around the live firing rounds, which were, we felt, good practice would have been 24 to 48 hours advance notice, and potentially not doing it in the middle of a trans-Tasman air route. But, they're completely within the confines of international law, the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. Those are the same laws that we rely upon with the freedom of navigation that we expect when we move around the world as well. So, that's their decision as to why they're doing it, as to where they were going. We're not informed in advance of that. But as I've said, no doubt about it, a much more contested world, and certainly not a benign environment.
Has anyone approached Chinese officials following the live fire drills?
We, Sunday week ago, raised the concerns with the Chinese at an official level, and I know it was raised in Minister Peters' meetings in China as well.
The British Prime Minister this morning, Sir Keir Starmer, spoke of a coalition of the willing that would back Ukraine maybe more strongly than it's received from some other allies recently. Would you imagine New Zealand being part of that coalition?
Well, I think you have seen us, back Ukraine. I mean, we've announced that, as I said, more funding as we've been putting into the Ukraine Relief Fund. We're very comfortable with our troops continuing to work with the British troops to train Ukrainian soldiers and extending that. We've certainly, been cranking up sanctions against Russian interests as well, and we'll continue to do so. So, I can't be any clearer. Our values are with Ukraine and with the Ukrainian people and with President Zelensky.
Would you consider us as joining into that coalition, though?
It's not a discussion that we've had at this point. I appreciate we're a long way away and our resources are somewhat small. But more importantly for me, it's about a principles and a values thing. Is that if you've got principles and values that you talk about, you've actually got to back it up, and that's what you've seen us do. And I spoke about this strongly in opposition at the time when the war started. It's an illegal war. The quickest way to stop it is actually for Russia to stop it, and we continue to entertain, and I've spoken with President Zelensky several times and met with him at least once in a very comprehensive way. We'll continue to, if there's anything else that's needed, we'll continue to consider it. Sorry, Jamie.
It seems like every single day we're seeing a news story about the school lunches program. When are you going to step in and force David Seymour to fix it?
Well, I mean, I've David Seymour's spoken with me and given me an update of the issues that he's facing, but I've got every confidence that as a senior capable minister he'll be able to sort it out.
Have you put any deadline on that? Because you previously asked him to make changes to it and it just seems to continue to have issues.
I haven't put a deadline on it, but I know he's taking it very seriously. It's got his full attention and he's working through the issues day by day. So I mean, I expect him to sort it out and solve it, and I know he will.
Have you been disappointed by those issues?
Well, I mean, I think the reality is, there's some pretty frustrating experiences. There's some very good experiences, to be honest, as well, and they probably don't get reported upon. But again, David is all over it. He understands what's required. He's in the detail of it all, and he's working the issue. And so, I've every confidence David will get it sorted.
Prime Minister, there was a scathing report released today on the governance of Wellington Water, and found that Wellingtonians were paying 3 times, in some cases, the amount for new pipes than other parts of the country. Key big New Zealand firms embedded in the provision of that they were providing it much more cheaply in other parts of the country than in Wellington. How widespread is this? And how much of a concern is this for a government that's keen on both infrastructure, water done well, and potentially local government reform?
No, it's a good question. I mean, the bottom line is I haven't seen all the details, but the details I've seen is unacceptable. Wellington Water is a total basket case. It has been for some time. It's not a proper CCO like we see in other parts of the country. It's a rather unique corruption that's been built up over a number of years. And the reality is that, they need to professionalise the management of the water assets here in this region. And, it's not, people call it a CCO. It's not a proper CCO that has balance sheet separation, proper governance, proper management. It's sort of at the whim of how much each of the different mayors can throw into the kitty, and that is not a way to manage long-term water assets. And that's why they need to adopt the local water done well models that we have presented, and that Simeon presented as local government minister, and Simon Watts is advocating strongly for now, and get a proper structure in place.
Were you ever advised of these issues when you were local government minister?
I think everyone's been aware of the issues with Wellington Water for some time. I think Georgina Campbell writes about it on almost a daily basis.
What about Wellington Water is corrupt? You said corruption.
No, as a configuration of like the way that it's organised as an organisation. The way that it's organised is not how our water assets are managed in CCO structures outside of Wellington. So it's often, I notice here in the bubble of Wellington. No, I mean as a configuration of an organisation, it is clear that it's not the same. It is not configured on the same basis that we would have CCOs configured in other parts of the country. You good folk here in Wellington often refer to it as a CCO. I don't think of it in those terms. I don't think of it as properly structured, and as a result, it's a total basket case.
At face value, it does appear that some of the large firms involved in this have been charging Wellingtonians more than what they're charging in other parts of the country. By multiples. How concerning is that to you?
Well, it's very concerning because that's the bits that I have read. That is what is worrying about this, is that what is actually going on with respect to what people are being charged and what is fair and what is happening. So
a handful of big players in New Zealand. I mean, does this warrant some sort of central government public inquiry?
What it warrants is for Wellington to focus seriously on improving its water assets. For that to happen, it needs to adopt one of the many models that have been positioned around local water done well, put a proper governance structure in place, get proper balance sheet separation, make sure long-run assets are properly debt funded, and actually have proper management controls around the spending and the asset management that needs to take place.
You have an observer in there now.
In the council.
In the council, so
Yes.
one of the water separate councils, you've got observer in one part,
Yep.
one of the partnership. But I mean, based on what you've seen in the report, what will you be expecting as central government to see come out of that?
Well,
what actions might you take if you're not satisfied?
Yeah, well, I mean, the key action I want to see is I want Wellington to move to a proper organisation that actually deals with the management of its water assets. And we've seen some good models of that, whether it's been the water care model, which I appreciate was a unique vehicle for Auckland. But when you saw an Auckland Council proposing 26% increase in rates and it ending up with 7% increase in rates because of the way it did the balance sheet separation and the funding and financing of those water assets, which is exactly strategic and long-term and exactly what professional modern countries should be doing, rather than what you see here is everything's just loaded up onto a ratepayer as a result. So, the reality is we've got major challenges, as we've seen with the performance of the council. We've got challenges here with Wellington Water. We can be so much better, and we must be so much better than this. The local water done well models is what we need applied quickly into Wellington, and I expect that's something the local government minister will be focusing on.
Prime Minister, can you compel them to do that? I think was Luke's question. Do you have any way to compel them to take up one of those models?
Yeah, we've got a series of options that Simeon can talk to from his previous experience in local government, where we basically went to the ratings agencies, and rather than spending $1.2 billion like the last Labor government did and got nowhere, we went and spent an insignificant, a relatively small amount of money to get clarity on which models would actually drive and create balance sheet separation, so they could borrow assets, borrow proper long-term debt funding for long-run assets. So the models are all there, but what we're seeing today is just is not professional, not gripped up, and it's lacking in proper management controls and governance controls.
Does it remain the government's commitment to lower the age for free bell screening?
Sorry?
Does it remain the government's commitment to lower the age for free bell
Yes,
screening?
we know it's difficult, we know it's challenging, but we continue to consider that, and we've got a number of announcements in the healthcare space, as I foreshadowed, in the coming months ahead, and I'm sure that's something that Simeon and his team will duly consider.
Can patients expect action on that this term?
Yes, I think they can.
The budget, will it be covered in the budget?
Sorry, I'm not going to get into it. You'll just have to wait to the budget. Sorry?
What's been the hold-up?
There's been no hold-up. We're just we're working at pace to deal with the challenges that we've got in our healthcare system. And right here, right now, when you just tip an extra $17 billion in, when you hire 2,000 more nurses and your productivity continues to slide, we have a major organisational problem that needs to step up. And that's why we've made the changes we have around the commissioner initially. That's why we've made, that's why we need management structure and team in place that actually can deliver the results that we want to see for better patient outcomes.
Patients can rest assured patients can rest assured you will keep that commitment.
What's that?
Patients can rest assured you will keep that commitment to lower the age for bell screening.
We want to work on lowering the age of bell screening, yes, but we'll have... Well, just hang fire. I've said to you we've got a range of healthcare announcements, but we are sequencing and working our way through the most pressing issues. And right now, when you have wait list times in emergency departments because actually the primary care system's failing, and as a result people go straight through and clog up hospitals and emergency departments, that's not cool. That's the issue we've got to try and focus on and solve. It's a big problem.
Out of the hospitals.
It is, for sure, but also actually having access to a GP and actually having access to primary care so that you don't actually end up going into an emergency department because you've actually been dealt with in the primary care system is also very important. So it's a complex system, but we have to work our way through it because the money's in, the workforce is growing, and the remuneration of the workforce is growing, but the productivity is poor, and that says we've got an organisational problem which we need to sort out and get fixed.
Prime Minister, just on
sorry.
the new APM's
Sorry?
this week, just on the new APM's visit this week, what can we expect from the discussions, what's going to be discussed?
Look, it's just, we actually meet more regularly as he passes through Auckland. I have to meet with him in Auckland. It's really just a chance for us to touch base, check in, see how everyone is, what's going on with each other, share what's happening in our respective countries, and it's just a courtesy call. So it'll be very informal, very friendly, and it's a chance for him and I just to catch up and talk about a range of issues in the Pacific and across the region.
So Helen Clark has questioned...
I'll come back to you, Glenn.
Have you made a decision yet on whether the Electoral Commission needed a review or an inquiry following the Marae stats?
Yeah, I know Paul Goldsmith's looking into that right now, and he'll have more to say about that shortly.
Helen Clark has questioned New Zealand's involvement with Five Eyes, given...
Sorry?
Helen Clark has questioned our involvement with the Five Eyes, given concerns about the Oval Office, about Donald Trump's views aligning with Russia. Do you think New Zealand should remain part of that? And why?
Absolutely. It's in New Zealand's national interest to remain part of it. And I'd just say to you, as Prime Minister, I see our current intelligence reports, not ones from 20 years ago. And I'd just say to you that it is right that we are very much part of the Five Eyes network.
You hit back at the Green Party, but do you think New Zealanders are justified in being concerned about our alliance with the US at the moment?
Well, as I say, New Zealanders should know that we have an independent foreign policy, a government and a Prime Minister that will act in their national interests and New Zealand's national interests. And we understand if we drive more prosperity and security, those two issues are linked. And there's a range of considerations that we make, as you've seen, around supporting Ukraine as being part of the Five Eyes network and other five-power defence force arrangements that we have in Southeast Asia, for example. So, we will continue to act in New Zealand's national interest. And, it's no longer a benign environment, as I said. So it might have been 20 years ago, but it's not today. And so we are taking the right course of actions, and we get tremendous value from being, in the intelligence sense, from being part of the Five Eyes network.
You said before that you still consider the US a reliable actor in this space. How do you justify
in what space, sorry?
You said before, Jamie asked you whether we can rely on the United States to keep its word.
Yes.
How do you justify that after what we saw on the weekend?
Well, as I said, what we saw was a tough conversation and an uncomfortable one. But
they're 180 on their entire position.
Well, but I'll just say to you, we have to find a peace in Ukraine, and Ukraine working with the US and Europe is really important. And I think you've seen a huge effort from leaders all around the world actually working towards that. You've seen that particularly from the European leaders. But for a peace to happen, we've got to have Ukraine at the table and US involved as well.
Do you trust Donald Trump?
Yes, I do. I trust the president, and I trust the American system, and that we can work well with the American system. I will continue to act in our own national interests, as you would expect me to do. But I think we can work well with a number of leaders and partners around the world.
Helen Clark was talking, I guess, about the mission creep of the Five Eyes. Are you comfortable with how broad the mission of the Five Eyes has become? Or could you see a scenario in which New Zealand could group together with other countries within the Five Eyes, especially, say, if Canada left or something like that?
Well, we have, there's a lot of hypotheticals in that question, and I'd just say to you that, I think there is a recency issue in terms of, I am seeing our intelligence reports here and now versus, as I said, with all respect, 20 years ago. And, the intelligence network that we have is a really important one. It actually is in New Zealand's national interest to be part of that, and we benefit from being part of that. Equally, we benefit from being a five-power defence force arrangements in Southeast Asia. We benefit from a whole range of other arrangements that we have with bipartisan arrangements between different countries, as well as obviously in collectives as well. The IP4 is another example of that. So, there's a range of things that we do to act in New Zealand's national interests, and we'll continue to do so, and that's one of them.
Okay. Just back to the Bell's reading, the national policy was to commission a business case. Has the business case even been started?
Again, we'll have more to say about a number of health issues as we go through the next few weeks and months.
Business case started, just the business case?
Yep, we'll have more to say about it, and honest Thomas, when we're ready to talk about it, we'll talk about it, and you'll know about it then. Sorry?
Have you done a business case?
Again, we'll have more to say about it, and when we do, you'll be the first to know.
Great. Awesome. The amendment stands, the one that's in that policy document, or the one that you made in the News Hub Leaders debate to lower the age?
Again, we'll talk about that when we're ready to talk about it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.